Hey everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm here showing you all the new Altenew Paint a Flower Rose for February 2020. Thank you to everyone who submitted their crafty and non-craft related questions over at Instagram. I'll be answering them in just a few moments, but first I wanted to show you how I got started with this card and talk a little bit about the Paint a Flower service. The Paint a Flower subscription is a gift you give yourself every 22nd of the month. Paint a Flower Rose from Altenew offers this 4x6 stamp set with 2 ready-to-color rose bouquets and coordinating sentiments that can be easily taken on the go and colored when you're away from your usual crafting space. Enrolling in the subscription guarantees your stock and offers a discounted price as opposed to paying full price for each individual stamp. If you're a huge Altenew fan and love coloring flowers, this is a pretty sweet deal. So here is Paint a Flower Rose, and as always I have all the Altenew products linked below in the description box and over on my blog. The first thing I'm going to do is create some rough masks with some scrap typing paper. I'll cut a reasonable margin just so I can plan how I want this rose bouquet to look on my card. I'm using my Altenew crafting mat with the A2 sized alignment grid to plan the placement of the 2 roses. I really liked the semicircle eccentric placement, so I grabbed an A2 panel of light gray cardstock and placed it in my mini MISTI. I followed the plan from my craft mat and transferred it onto my cardstock. I inked and stamped the images with Evening Gray Crisp dye ink from Altenew. This ink shade is perfect for the coloring I'm going to do in a few moments. I did have to use a piece of washi tape to mask off one of the leaf clusters on the rose bouquet so that it didn't run into the previously stamped image. So here's my finished card layout. I'm doing a 1-layer card today with my graphite and white pencils. I have a previous video explaining the graphite grading system, but to keep it simple, I'll use 4H, 5B, and white to quote-unquote color these stamped images. 4H is a hard pencil that will give me detail, 5B is a soft pencil that will give me darkness, and white of course is for highlight. I'll use a sharp blending stump to soften the transitions between all these colors. And with that being said, let's move on to some of your questions you sent me on the gram. I'm going to try not to answer the same questions, but this one I just can't resist answering. It is, what got you into card making to begin with? I think like many of you who are creative, I wanted something with a little bit of a personal touch. So I looked up how to make thank you cards, and of course I stumbled across many of the people who do share their videos over on YouTube. That was a little over 5 years ago, and now I'm here, sharing what I know with you all. Okay, so will you design stamps in the future? I always have a few ideas, sometimes when I'm just out and about and I think, hey, that would be a really sweet stamp set. I think I could draw them myself, but it's just nothing I've ever practiced quite yet. But of course, if that opportunity comes, I would love to. What are some of the tips to get brands to recognize your work? I think this question sort of comes full circle with the first question. If you ask people about their crafty journey, a lot of them will tell you that they started by Googling how to make cards, and then a lot of the big names on YouTube start to come up. So in my opinion, I think people are looking for YouTubers and somebody who can showcase product for them. And for me personally, I like creating content with new products, showing you techniques that I've sort of made up or that I know. And ever since I opened up my YouTube channel, momentum has sort of started to pick up. Have you done a craft room tour video? I have not, because I'm in a rental right now and it feels very temporary, and I probably won't do one for another year or so. How do you avoid the little fibrous hairs on die cuts? Fortunately, I don't encounter this problem often, but I do know what you're talking about. A lot of it for me has to do with the age and the use of my cutting plates. I have 2 die cutting machines. One of them is the Spellbinders Platinum, and the other one is the Altenew Mini Blossom die cutting machine. Typically the rule for me is if I cannot see my hand anymore through the acrylic cutting plate, then it's time to move on to the other side or to just replace the cutting plates completely. And usually when I follow that rule is when I start to get the little fibers and hairs that stick out from my die cuts. But of course, if it is unavoidable, I do have a piece of 1500 grit sandpaper, and I'll just lightly smooth out those rough edges. Speaking of crafty problems, let's talk about some of my crafty pet peeves. One of the biggest ones, and one of the things I think you all can relate to, is stray embossing powder, especially on dark cardstock. Sometimes it does feel inevitable, but I'm sort of a perfectionist, so these sorts of things do bother me. One of my other pet peeves, or I guess something that I don't like doing, is masking. I know I did it in this card, but I guess I attribute it to masking papers. I haven't quite found anything that works 100% well for me. Either the tack is too strong and I end up ripping the mask itself and it just feels like a waste of a mask, or it's too weak and it's not reusable since the ink will transfer onto the paper below. So I struggle to find a masking paper that is 1, reusable, 2, easy to release without ripping the mask itself, and 3, that it's thin enough and it doesn't leave those odd gaps in between where you've masked and where you're going to stamp next, if you know what I mean. So yeah, even though I do a little bit of masking here and there, it's not my favorite. Do you wish you lived closer to Ashley Crafts? Well, I've never been to New England, but I will say a lot of my favorites do live in the Northeast. But I don't know, I feel like I'm such a Western boy, I can't think of any other place that I would like to live besides here. What milkshake you got that brings the boys to the yard? If I had to attribute it to a flavor, it would be strawberry cheesecake. And that's all the time I have for these questions. So before I mount this panel onto my card base, I'm going to use some white calligraphy ink to add some splatters around the flowers. I'll use the roughly cut masks from earlier to protect the flowers. I'll use the same evening gray to stamp the sentiment and my MISTI to keep everything aligned. And that's it for this 1-layer grayscale rose card. I have one additional project using the Paint a Flower Rose over on my blog if you would like to check that out. I have my blog linked below in the description box, as well as the materials I used for this card project. Thanks again for submitting your questions to me so I can put something different besides music on my videos. I hope to keep doing this series, so either leave a comment for a question you would like to see in a future video, or head over to my blog to leave a comment on the coordinating post. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss that video. Huge thanks to Altenew for sending this stamp set to show to you all. Thank you all so much for watching and have the best day.